morning. Happy Monday. Good morning, Instagram. Good morning, Facebook. Good morning, YouTube. I pray that you had a phenomenal weekend and are rested and restored. I'm Elizabeth Everett, and this is Grace in the Breaking. And I come on and do a live 3 days a week on Monday, Wednesday, and Friday mornings at 8:30 a.m. Central Time. And we are staying in a theme of deliverance and healing. That's what we've been working on for the last month. And this week's message is guarding what God has restored. And we're going to get right into the message today. So I thank you so much for your support. I would love if you would like and share this message. And just thank you for being a part of this ministry. So we're going to get into part one of guarding what God restored this week. And part one is guarding your testimony. So let me ask you this. What do you think comes after rest? Last week we closed on the ground you stand on with a truth that I want to put right back in front of you this morning. That rest is not a retreat, but rested ground still has to be guarded because you cannot guard what you never let yourself receive. If you actually did the work of the series last week, if you set a boundary, if you name the cycle and you let yourself rest instead of white knuckling through, then you've had something that has genuinely shifted inside of you. Something has been restored. And restored ground is precious ground. Ground that cost you something to reclaim does not automatically stay safe just because you fought so hard to get it. That is why we're moving into the new series today, Guarding What God Restored. 3 weeks, same rhythm, stewardship, spiritual warfare, and legacy. Today is part one, Guarding the Testimony. If you're just jumping on, I'm Elizabeth Everett with Grace in the Breaking Ministry, and I would love if you would like and share this video. So I want to be honest with you about something, why I'm starting here and not somewhere flashier. Because most of us think that guarding means preparing for something dramatic, some big future attack, but the truth is, the first thing that needs guarding is usually the most obvious thing in the room, and that's your story. What God actually has done. How you tell it, who you tell it to, and what you let it mean going forward. The cost of assuming you're arrived. I want to sit in that moment with a trap that catches so many of us right after a genuine breakthrough. The assumption that the arrival means that the work is finished. Friends, it's not, it's just the beginning. We celebrate a milestone, a boundary held, and a cycle broken. A season of rest has finally come, and something in us quietly exhales as if the journey has now reached its final destination. Listen, we're human. I understand that impulse completely. After years of fighting, you deserve like you've failed to arrive somewhere. But spiritually, that is rarely a final arrival on this side of heaven. I'm sorry I'm getting choked up this morning. There is always a next to steward, a next season to guard, and a next layer to walk out faithfully. That's not meant to exhaust you. It's meant to hold you through breakthroughs with open hands instead of treating any single moment as if it's the finish line where vigilance is no longer required. I want you to sit for that for a moment. How many of you out there right now have experienced breakthrough and then got comfortable and watched it quietly slip away? Or you've watched quietly the warfare, the intensity of it increase? Baby, it's not because you did something wrong. Opposition is a direct indication that hell is scared and that you're moving in the right direction. So I need you to dig your heels in with Jesus. No other reason, no aggression, no opposition, no offense. Oh, I'm going to do this because, no. No. So we're going to talk about guarding the testimony. The seed that fell among the thorns stands for those who hear. But as they go on their way, they are choked by life's worries, riches, pleasures, and they do not mature. Luke 8:14. I need you to hear that. The seed fell among thorns stands for those who hear, but as they go on their way are choked by life's worries, riches, and pleasures, and they do not mature. Do you see that? We are the cause if something doesn't mature. We let life choke it out. We let the what ifs choke it out. We let the pain, the reminiscence of things that the enemy's trying to play in our ears. We're stopping it. So right now I need to call you into the Lord. Listen, this has been a weekend for me too. I'm not immune to spiritual warfare, just as you're not. But I'm going to tell you something. When life lives, we take it, we absorb it, and then we lay it back down. Jesus, I held my boundary. My yes meant yes and my no meant no. Was that boundary difficult to do? It was. Did it come from a posture of love? It did. And will that seed grow at the proper time? It absolutely will. But until then, I have to lay it down. I've done my part. I did what God asked me to do. And now I must stand. Jesus told the parable of the sower, knowing exactly what would happen to good seed planted in bad conditions. Some seeds fall on a path, some on rocky ground, and some on thorns. The thorn ground is the one I want to sit with you this morning, because the thorn ground isn't hostile ground. It's not rejecting the seed outright the way the path does. It's ground that receives the word, that takes root, lets it start to grow, and then slowly, quietly, without a single dramatic moment, let something else grow up alongside it until the good things get choked out entirely. Ooh, that hits the belly kind of heavy this morning. This is what happens to an unguarded testimony. Nobody stands in a storm and seals your breakthrough in one violent moment. It gets choked slowly by things that look harmless at first, like returning to an old habit. A little compromise there, a little compromise here. An old relationship let back in just this once, until one day you look around and you can't quite locate the freedom you were standing in 6 months ago. Small compromises can cause catastrophic future plans. And let me give you a story from my own guarding season. I want to tell you about a season in my life where I learned this the hard way. One of the hardest breakthroughs that took years of prayer and heartbreak to walking in. I remember telling my story constantly at first in a fresh new way. It was raw. It was easy to talk about because it was still so close to the surface. But somewhere around month 4 or 5, life just got busy again. Normal returned and I quietly stopped telling it. Not because I decided to stop, but because the urgency, it faded. The way urgency always does in a crisis that passes. And some months later, I noticed something troubling. I'd started doubting whether the breakthrough I had even been real. Not because anything had gone wrong, because I had stopped rehearsing it. I had stopped speaking it, and I had stopped letting it anywhere outside my own private memory. It took a friend reminding me this weekend of the specifics, the details I had genuinely forgotten, for the whole thing for me to come back into focus. That was the moment that I understood an unspoken testimony doesn't just ring by forgotten people. It risks being forgotten by you. Wow, I am so sorry that I'm a little emotional this morning. This message is really piercing my heart, and I hope it pierces yours too. I'm going to tell you something. I'm going to say it again. A testimony is not proof against an attack. It's a target. But I need you to hear me clearly this morning, because I think a lot of us walk out a breakthrough season assuring the hard part is over. We think, you know what, I fought for this. I have my testimony and surely the worst is behind me. I understand why we think that. It feels true. It should be true. But I have watched enough women, including myself, walk through enough seasons and lived enough of my own to tell you plainly, a testimony does not make you immune to attack. It makes you a target. I want you to think about that practically. Before your breakthrough, you were stuck. And stuck people aren't usually dangerous to the patterns that keep them stuck. But the moment you get free, the moment your life starts to actually reflect what God did and what He's doing, you become dangerous. You become a threat to hell. You become dangerous to the old cycle, dangerous to the enemy's plans for your family line. Dangerous, honestly, to anyone who benefited from the old, smaller version of you. A woman who has been set free and knows it is one of the most threatening things to the spiritual realm, precisely because her freedom proves it's possible for everyone watching. Don't you dare quit. You hear me? Don't you quit. Someone in your family, someone that's watching you is waiting for your testimony to be heard, watching you to see how you've overcome and didn't fall and didn't quit. And it's going to give them the courage to keep moving forward. It's going to give them the courage to step out. The Israelites and the manna, they couldn't hoard. Each one is to gather in as much as they need. They gathered in as much as each of them needed. However, some of them paid no attention to Moses and kept part of it until morning, but it was full of maggots and began to smell. Exodus 16, verses 16 through 20. I find this passage fascinating because it teaches something almost opposite of what we expect about guarding. God gave the Israelites manna daily and told them not to hoard it, told them not to stockpile it or get more than they needed for the day because it wouldn't keep. The ones who tried to guard it by hoarding it woke up with maggots and stench. There's a nuisance here I want you to catch. A nuance, sorry. Guarding your testimony doesn't mean clutching it so tightly, so anxiously that you try to control every possible outcome or protect it from ever being tested again. That kind of hoarding actually spoils it. Real guarding trusts God for tomorrow's provision the same way He provided today's. So you guard by staying faithful today, not by trying to grip so hard that you can never touch it again. There's a difference between wise stewardship and anxious hoarding. And it's worth knowing which one of them you're actually practicing. Think about Nehemiah's trowel and his sword. Those who carried materials did their work with one hand and held a weapon in the other, according to Nehemiah 4:17. I love this picture because it's so unglamorous. But it's so true how restoration actually works. Nehemiah's people weren't just building the wall. They weren't sitting back admiring a finished project immune to a threat. They were still in the middle of construction and they had to hold the tool for building in one hand and the weapon for defending in the other at the same time for the same project. Honey, if that's you right now and you're carrying that testimony and you're carrying your sword in the other hand and you're fighting that spiritual warfare, you are not alone. You are not alone. If you're carrying that fresh testimony, if you're still building, your wall isn't finished, and the posture God is asking of you isn't relax now the work is done. It's keep building. Keep the weapon of the word in your hand while you do it. Guarding it is not a sign that something's wrong. Guarding it is simply what it looks to be in the middle of restoration instead of pretending you've already arrived at something finished, safe, and unthreatened. Guarding doesn't mean isolating. I want to correct a misunderstanding before we move on, because I've watched so many women take this teaching too far in the opposite direction. Guarding your testimony does not mean withdrawing from everyone, trusting no one, and treating every relationship as a potential threat to your breakthrough. That's not guarding. That's isolating, and isolating is a tactic from the enemy. It's one of the very things that makes a testimony more vulnerable, not less, because it removes you from the very community that would otherwise help you carry it. That is why I created Inner access, so you don't have to do it alone. I've walked in those isolating seasons. I've walked in when I didn't trust anymore because the enemy told me that I was too much, or all the lies that I had not broken agreement with. And it's hard to keep the promise. It's hard to walk in it when you're walking alone, because that's when the enemy gets you alone. That's when he gets you in your thoughts. That's where community comes in with deliverance and with healing, because everything that we bring dark to the surface gets broken off. It loses its legal right. And we know that when we're going through this warfare, we have someone else to call on that sees us and won't let us shrink back. So I want to remind you of that. The goal isn't fewer relationships, it's wiser discernment within the relationships that you have, and intentional investments in the ones that are actually safe. A guarded garden still has a gate. It's not sealed shut forever. It simply has a gate that opens on purpose for the right people, instead of standing wide open for whoever to wander in and take your promise. I'm going to tell you something. Guarding can sometimes feel like doubt. And I want to address something that some of you might be feeling right now. That I have to guard this so carefully. Does that mean that I don't fully trust what God's doing in me? Was it real or was it permanent? I understand that question, and I want to clarify it. I want to answer it directly. Guarding is not doubt. You hear me? Guarding is not doubt. A soldier who keeps watch at a fortified city isn't doubting that the walls were built. He's honoring how much the city is worth by refusing to treat its safety as automatic. Wow, that is the same here. Guarding your testimony isn't evidence of shaky faith in what God did. It's evidence of how seriously you take and how valuable what you think he did actually is. The woman who guards the least carefully are usually the ones with the most faith. They often simply think the ones haven't been taught enough about guarding and trusting, but we're meant to work together, not against each other. And I'm going to tell you something, what guarding a testimony looks like. Let's get practical. I don't want to leave you with old imagery this morning. Guarding your testimony looks like being careful of who you let speak into your story while it's still tender. Because not everybody asked about your breakthrough is safe to tell the full version to. Some people ask out of genuine care, but some ask so they can quietly pick it apart, they can minimize it, or they can use it against you later. Because that's what the enemy does. Discernment about your own story is not secrecy, it's stewardship. And I'm going to tell you what, the Lord is in a season of... He is exposing the snakes in your life. He is, and I don't mean that ugly, not literal snakes, but he's exposing the ones that are double-minded. He's exposing the ones that bring doubt. They're exposing the ones that bring negativity in your life. So guard your ear gates. Your circle matters. Again, that's why a community of women, you need to get in a community. You need to get in a community, man or woman, with people that hold you accountable, that see your spiritual walk, know your story, and help you walk it out without falling down. If you do fall down, someone's there to pick you up, because in isolation, you don't have that. Guarding your testimony also looks like refusing to let old identities back into the room when they don't belong there anymore. If God delivered you from a pattern of self-abandonment, guarding your testimony means even noticing the small moment you're tempted to abandon yourself again for someone's approval and interrupting it immediately instead of waiting on it until a full relapse. It looks like actually telling the testimony out loud regular instead of letting it quickly fade into the background of your life. Because I'm going to tell you something, testimonies that go unspoken have a strange way of losing their grip on you. Not because God's work wasn't real, but because we are forgetful creatures. The enemy loves nothing more than our own selective amnesia about what we've already come. That's why every morning I need you to remember, you need to tell God, thank you for waking me up. Thank you that I'm not where I was. Thank you for giving me eyes to see. Thank you for giving me ears to hear. It all changes with your posture. And sorry, I've been a little teary-eyed this morning. Now my sinuses are going. I'm going to tell you something. It's time that we start praying for God to help us guard what he has restored. Because before we can move into how this is practically going to work out this week, I want to give you words to pray, because I know some of you came in here this morning not even sure specifically about what needs guarding. You might pray something like this: Lord, Show me clearly what you have restored in my life that I have not been guarding well. I don't want to lose ground because of carelessness or out of distraction. Give me the wisdom about who has access to the story and give me the courage to keep speaking it out loud. Even when the urgency is faded and the season has become ordinary again, help me to hold the trowel and the sword at the same time, defending it and building it in Jesus' name for as long as the work requires. Pray that specifically this week, not just right now this morning. And you might be asking, how long do I have to keep guarding? I want to answer that some of you have been asking quietly, how long does this actually take? When does guarding stop and living just start? I wish I could give you a clean number of months. But the honest answer is that guarding never fully graduates into something that you stop doing entirely. It shifts. And in the early days after a breakthrough, guarding takes a constant, active attention, checking on your own heart daily, being deliberate about who has access to your story. And over time, patterns become more genuinely established. Guarding becomes less exhausting and more instinctive. The way a seasoned driver doesn't consciously think through every single motion that a new driver does. But it never fully disappears. Even mature ground still gets weeded. The intensity changes, but the necessity doesn't. And there's danger of a private testimony. I want to name something directly. A testimony that only exists in your head is far easier to lose than one that has been spoken in community. If the only place your breakthrough lives is inside your memory, it's vulnerable to every discouraging thought, every bad day, and every moment that your feelings don't match what you know to be true. But a testimony that is spoken out loud and witnessed by other women, other men, and prayed over in a community, honey, that testimony now has support beams other than just the willpower of any given day. That is exactly why I built the Inner Access community the way I did. It is not a place to simply consume teaching and then disappear. It's a place where your testimony gets spoken. It's witnessed and it's remembered by people who remind you on the days of it that you cannot remember it yourself. If you have a breakthrough right now that only exists privately, I want to challenge you this morning. An unspoken testimony is much easier for the enemy to quietly unravel than one that's been declared in front of witnesses who love you enough to make you hold on to it. If you're not in Inner Access yet, I need you to reach out to me directly. I don't want your testimony living in your own memory where the easiest to attack and the hardest to defend is being alone. I've walked through it. I understand. Come. See a man who told me everything I did. Could this be the Messiah? John 4:29. I think about the Samaritan woman at the well when I teach on this because her response to encountering Jesus was a clear picture of what an unashamed, guarded, but shared testimony looks like. She had every reason to quit. Her past was public knowledge. The very reason she was drawing water alone in the heat of the day instead of with other women in the cool of the morning. And yet the moment that she encountered real transformation, she left her water jar at the well and went straight in the town to tell people, the very people who likely knew her complicated story. She didn't wait until she was fully polished, fully healed, or even fully qualified. She went and told what she knew to be true in a moment. And scripture says many believed her because of her testimony. Your story doesn't need to be finished, tidy, and free of complication before it's worth guarding and sharing. It needs to be true and it needs to be spoken instead of left at the well. Sometimes our testimony feels fragile. And I know that some of you right now are in that tender place. Baby, you know something has shifted. You felt that you know God did something real, but it's still fragile, still tender, and it feels like it could slip away if you look at it wrong. I want to speak right now to that specifically. Fragile does not mean fake. New growth is always more vulnerable than established growth. A young tree needs staking precisely because it's real and it's still growing, not because something's wrong with it. And if your testimony feels fragile right now, that's not a sign it isn't true. It's a sign it's young. And young things need to be guarded more intentionally than mature things do, not less. For some of you, guarding your testimony means guarding the next dream God has put in front of you, the business, the ministry, the calling, and the calling that you're finally ready to step forward to. I'm going to tell you something. New dreams are just as vulnerable as new freedom, maybe even more so, because they haven't proven themselves yet to even you. And that is why the Rise Up Mastermind was created, to protect a personalized roadmap and a real accountability so the dream you just received doesn't quietly get choked out by fear or comparison or simply drifting back into old, smaller patterns before even has a chance to get to take root. It's a place to step into what God has been calling you for. It's a place after you're healed where you're ready to move. What God restored in me is not fragile in his hands, but it does require my stewardship, and it requires yours too. So right now I need you to say, Lord, I will guard my testimony with wisdom. I will speak it into community, and I refuse this morning to let old patterns choke out what he has done. I am building and defending at the same time. And that is not a sign of weakness. It is the posture of restoration itself in Jesus' name. Before we close this morning, I want you to name your testimony out loud. Not just to yourself, not in a whisper, but let me ask you this. What did God actually restore? Write it down, put it in the comments. Then I want you to ask yourself out honestly. Who knows this story besides me? If the answer is no one, maybe this is your sign. That's your assignment this week. You got to tell somebody. You got to put it out there. You got to share it so you're not carrying that around anymore, because what you bring to the light no longer has power. Wednesday, we're going to go deeper into what it looks like to guard against re-entry, because the enemy's strategy is rarely a brand new attack. It's almost always trying to walk you back through a door that you already knew he closed. So don't be like the dog in Return to the Vomit. I know that's graphic, but that hits with the head. And I know that if something got stirred in you this morning and your testimony is still living in isolation, it's time to get in community. It's time to get in a room where it's drawn out. You name it, you break it, and then we help you guard the promise and the breakthrough. God never created you to walk this life out alone. So I want to ask you today, why are you still doing it? There are so many resources at Grace in the Breaking that we have. The whole ministry is assimilated on healing. So listen, I've walked through prodigal seasons where I was a prodigal myself. I have walked through praying a prodigal home, and I've walked through prodigal children. And I'm going to tell you something, none of it is easy. And it will break you if you don't have a support system around you. It will break you if you don't decide to get healed in the waiting. So what are you delaying for? There is someone watching you, and their breakthrough depends on your healing. It depends on your surrender and your obedience. There are resources. If you have a prayer request, you reach out to me. You go on graceinthebreaking.com, you fill it out, it's confidential. It doesn't even go to my team, it will come directly to me. If you want to support this ministry, there are ways to give on the website. You can also check out Grace in the Breaking podcast. And I also want to remind you today that when you're guarding your promise, it's so important not to retreat into your head. I just want you to know you're not alone. And again, that is why Grace in the Breaking was created. The community is a place of accountability, deliverance, and healing. So it's time to get free. It's time to get healed. Whatever season you're working through. I just launched a new devotional. It actually went live and it's 66 days of hope. It is 592 pages of accountability that you walk through. If that's something that you're interested in, I will be adding it to the website today, or you can message me the word hope and I will send you the link for that devotional, because it is action steps, it is declarations, it is journaling, it is helping you get free. There are so many e-courses on the website as well. But friends, I just want to say I love you. I will see you on Tuesday, and we will be continuing in Guarding What God Restored series, and we will be, part 2 is guarding against reentry. Till then, friends, I love you and I appreciate you.